anything I need to do to make sure everything works, or
Yeah, just go ahead and get your
No.
settings.
or this cloud? Is that this? Or is that this? Okay, so that's the one.
So that's actually what it's doing, yes.
Well, so there was a time when my wife could do this, and this is not now, so.
But at this point, everything's actually recording, and I'll just turn off the, all it's on this space. So at this point, we were ready to go. Let's start whenever you want. I'll make sure everything's on.
Thank you. Hi.
Are you Dr.
Yes, I am.
Cameron?
Oh, nice to meet you. Yeah, so nice to see you. What's new?
Don't care.
That's good, yeah. So you did the art? So there's some personal.
Yeah.
Manipulation with
Does
that.
he has different levels?
Yeah, that's so many ways we created.
Basics, yeah, solid.
How do you guys like this? Yeah. This used to be our rehearsal room. So this used to be the music room, and then I take over the board room. So you know how music ranks up against politics. So.
This is like the more expensive now.
So, what's new? It's nice to meet the people behind the scene. You know, it's like these online classes. Yeah.
Next semester, James.
Oh, great. Yeah, we look at that.
Afterwards.
Music theory, we have both Zoom based and we have face to face. So if you're able to do the face to face, you probably enjoy it better. I mean, there's like actual people there. Do you remember people?
Well, jazz class is first.
Yeah, no, I know. I don't still know how to do that.
Stay tuned, we will be starting momentarily.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty amazing.
That's not like Windows.
I tried. First time it's
Open this thing all the way up?
You can, but you'll probably find that you need to.
It's overkill.
Yeah. Did you play? Go ahead and play.
No, I was playing a little bit. Yeah.
Pretty powerful.
Is that a concert grade, the whole thing?
Yes. I haven't played one of these since I was at Wayne State. At the DIA. Or not the DIA, the DSL.
Well, Wayne State has this Steinway too. On stage something.
I don't know if it's a full concert.
Oh, really?
I don't think they have the full concert. Well, they probably do somewhere, because they have.
Yeah, so we had a guy that was, that knew rich people, and they gifted this to us. And so our battle for the last 10 years has been because we'll find like smashed up against the wall, and, you know, there'll be, you know, beer cans on top. You guys know this is a style.
So what is this?
Thanks.
I mean, like, do you want us to send it to someone?
No, you can.
Okay, all right, just checking.
Yeah, and I think we'll start with 1 minute after. We'll start right on time.
Okay.
I don't think that's such a short bit there. Everybody else will be like,
Yeah.
We're fine, we're fine. We have a light that's gonna pop up there so we can still watch you for the rest of the concert, just so you know, we just can't. Well, first I was like, yeah. Nothing awkward about that, so.
Well, you do have quite a silhouette.
So, I guess we can keep this off here. So welcome everybody. This is the first in our series that we're calling World Arts and Education Forum. We're really, really happy to be able to do this and continue to look at the way the arts reflect the world and the cultural values and what we call cultural assets of different cultures. Give us more to work with to create better lives, more creative and artistic lives. And so we have a wide variety of different musicians from around the world that we're bringing in this semester, and we are already lining up for next semester. So you guys are at the first event, and we're really happy to have you. I'm going to read the first quote here just as a kind of an inspiration. History has thus far recorded principally the experience of tribes, cultures, classes, and nations. With the physical unification of the planet in this century and acknowledgement of the interdependence of all who live on it, the history of humanity as one people is now beginning. Endowed with the wealth of all the genetic and cultural diversity that has evolved through past ages, the Earth's inhabitants are now challenged to draw on their collective inheritance to take up, consciously and systematically, the responsibility for the design of their future. Our feeling is that the arts are a platform by which we learn about other cultures and also learn how to be able to not only coexist, but exist with each other and with other cultures to create a sense of equity and inclusivity that can eventually solve most of the problems we have. So we actually believe that artists are at the kind of the forefront of what we need to be able to do in order to change our world. This event is sponsored by the sponsors there. I'm not going to go ahead and read them, so I'm going to go ahead and move on and introduce our program for today and our special guest artist today. So when we're talking about what is the role of arts in education today, we're talking about jazz, and particularly the jazz rhythm section of the jazz trio. And so what is the link between improvisation and creative problem solving? How do we understand spontaneous creativity linked to self-fulfillment? Is there a link between improvisation and our ability to enhance our creativity? These are all the kinds of things that jazz kind of brings us, and we'll be kind of talking about in terms of the context of this program today. So, about our guests. Oh, and also about the concept of sacrifice, because musicians and artists, as you know, in order to be able to learn their craft and give to the world, have to pay their dues. In fact, there's an expression that actually comes from jazz about paying your dues. And that's not only paying your dues about learning the progressions and learning what it is we do on our instruments, but also learning about the history of the jazz musicians that make the music. Because if you don't know that history, it's hard to play the song. And that's true of everything. So jazz musicians have kind of an added component. They need to know the life of Charlie Parker to be able to effectively play his music, etc. All right. So our guest today, first off, John Dolph is our featured guest today. He's a jazz pianist and graduate from our Detroit area, particularly Wayne State University. He and his Detroit-based trio today will illustrate the ways that mastering selected jazz standards provide the fundamentals required to be a creative professional career and have a creative professional career in music. And then what's really cool for us is that John originally actually took some classes here at Washtenaw Community College, so in a sense he's an alumnus. I don't know that when people leave Washtenaw that they refer to themselves as alumni of us, but we're happy. Yeah, we're happy to call them that. So, he's also done a tremendous amount of work in the Detroit area. He's played with Detroit Jazz and African World Festivals, Detroit Athletic Club, chop houses, a variety of different places where he's featured both as a solo artist and in trios. And today he's going to be performing with Samuel Chase Harris on bass and with Jonathan Blatchett, who's going to be playing drums. So I'm going to turn it over to you, John, and thank you again, and thank you guys for the trio for being able to come here today.
All right, well, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming out. And we're going to start with a song that was by Miles Davis, and it's called Tune Up. And then after that, we can talk a little bit more in depth about some of the music. But we're going to go ahead and start right off with the song then. One, two, a 1, 2, 3. So that song I actually learned from Professor Naylor himself, was introduced by Professor Naylor when I was here at Washtenaw. And come on in, hey, Michelle. And I just think that's a great song for anybody that's interested in learning jazz. And it's several reasons why. First off is the 251. Has anybody heard of the 251? You might have heard of it.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us about the 251?
Oh, me?
Yeah, sure.
Well, it's a chord progression.
It's a chord progression, right?
Yeah.
And it's important to jazz. So I would say it's the most important progression in jazz, as well as many other kinds of music. And it's just very popular. You'll find it across almost any jazz song you learn. And this song, right from the very start of it, is a 251. So 251 is just this. In its simplest form. And then we're going to go down a key and do it again. One more time. So basically, the song is just comprised of 3 251s. So that's 3 different keys going down in order. So for anyone that wants to learn jazz, this is a great place to start. And this was actually my introduction to jazz music, learning this way. And it really helps because one thing that's really unique to jazz is that it's a lot of key changes. And I would say in one song it's multiple keys. So that's kind of different from the pop songs you normally listen to. It's generally in one key throughout. So if it's in the key of F, it'll pretty much more or less be in F. There may be some key changes, small, but in jazz, it's constant key changes in general. So this song will help you practice on the first 251. You're in the key of D, so you'll be playing in the key of D. Now, right here, we're going to go to the key of C. So these notes are going to be flatted. Now we're going to the new key. So. These notes are going to get flat. the chords, it's called actually a concept known as kind of like outlining the chords, or you play the changes. So the song itself is going to change through keys, and I'm just going to adhere to that and make sure I adhere to the key changes. And that's a really common practice in jazz, and it'll make your solo sound good right away. One other thing about this song, Tune Up, that I really like is it has some great extensions, harmonic jazz extensions that are common. So right off like the first chord right here, you have an A over E minor chord. So this is actually a 11th note chord. So just by playing the melody, you have this nice 11th chord if you guys. You have a nice full chord. And now when I go to the second melody note, this is a sharp 11th right here. So if you can hear some dissonance, a little bit of tension in there. And this would be something that's common to jazz, not so much to every other style of music, but it's definitely common to jazz. So you get this nice. And on the major chord again. So it's a great song to start with, just to kind of get the essential jazz harmony in your ear to kind of get used to dealing with those sort of things.
So one of the things that John just showed you is how much energy jazz musicians have to go into to be able to go ahead and play what you heard. It's hard to improvise what we call unconscious consciousness, to the point where you're conscious of the theory that he just did, and then you do it unconsciously. You're not thinking about it, which is a progression of movement that takes years. Now, another thing that is universal from jazz to everything that you're into, if you like beat-based music, is the rhythm section. And what we have here is a rhythm section. And so what is the history of the rhythm section? Well, the rhythm section is an amalgamation. We talked about all the world's history now being capable of being accurately rewritten. All of world music is a fusion, and jazz is particularly a fusion of cultures. But it originated, the rhythm section as we know it, originated through what we call trad jazz, which is traditional jazz from New Orleans. And New Orleans was a place that West African people, people from the Caribbean, escaped slaves from the Caribbean, African Americans in the United States, and a whole amalgamation of Europeans, particularly Arcadian French, who were also repressed white folks. Because it was primarily British folks. They all hung out together with Native Americans, and so trad jazz was born there, and particularly it was funeral processions, where they believed that you had to go ahead and honor the passing of someone with just the snare drummer. So our drummer here would just take the snare drum, and then when the burial occurs, they believed, according to West African and Caribbean tradition, that you then celebrate the homegoing, which is the celebration of life. And so this music then was born out of that, and the bass would be a sousaphone initially, and the piano would be a banjo initially, because it's hard to travel obviously with a sine wave. But eventually over time it morphed into what you now see, and this is what we call the rhythm section, and that's what puts the beat or the rhythm in all of your music. So if you're listening to, electronic music, and you're listening to rock, you're listening to country music or whatever, and you say you like the beat, well, you don't really like the beat, you like the combined rhythm of the rhythm section, which includes these three primary instruments. So let's just quickly talk, before we do the next piece, let's just quickly talk about the roles here in jazz, specifically of the rhythm section. Like, what is the role of the bass player? What is the role of the drummer? What is the role of the piano player? We'll do quickly. So if you want to go ahead and share your thoughts, like, what is your role? What do you do for a living there?
It depends on
The piece.
particular piece of music, but this is a pretty typical standard jazz piece. So my job is to know the chord changes and to outline them. Typically, more in the lower parts, the roots are very important. So it's a very selfless job. It's not a great one to do if you want to be very confident. But it's a good one to do if you want to be employed, because everybody is bass players will add it. It's true. So I've made literally hundreds of dollars doing this. But yeah, my job is to keep time, a nice solid quarter note pulse, and then try and pick notes that clearly outline progression for anybody playing, Another thing is you're told that when in doubt, listen to the bass player for where you're at. So it's kind of really important for the bass player to really know where you're at all times because you don't have another bass player to listen to, unfortunately. And so really it's a matter of keeping good time, good pulse, good propulsion with the chord notes, and then using my note choices between that supports other people. And then when I get time to solo, it's the same as anybody else, just trying to be expressive and creative with the type of the form in theory.
And he also anchors down the chord progression. So to be honest with you, most of us that are like horn players, vocalists, and whatever, no offense, John, we're listening to the piano player and the qualities, but that's too much for us to process, to play melodies. So we really listen to the bass player because he tells us the root of the chord progression, and that kind of lets us know the movement, and the rest we kind of infer off of you. So when he disappears, we're like toast. We don't know what to do. Okay, what's the role of the drummer?
So my role is obviously to groove, to keep a nice steady groove, to really support and enhance what the soloist is doing, so in this case John, or Sam really. And we need to act as a unit, so we are one, we play together. So he was talking about how he keeps a quarter note pulse. Well, I keep the quarter note pulse, usually in my bass drum, so it's really soft, but it enhances what Sam is doing. And then my left hand usually accentuates what the soloist is doing, like I said, John in this case. And then I keep the swing pattern on the ride, and that is also built off the quarter note pulse that Sam is keeping and my bass drum is keeping.
So very quickly, what do you mean by swing? Because somebody who's a non-musician probably has other connotations of that. So define what do you mean by swing?
Yeah, so it's based off this triplet feel, so. And then I take parts of that triplet feel, so this is the quarter note. Shuffly kind of swing feel instead of like common rock beat, which is we call straight eighth. One and two and three and one and two
And what they both share in common came out of the Black Church, which is a backbeat on 2 and 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And so all of our
I ended up covering that.
yeah. So he does it with his hi-hat. Essentially, for rock and roll, for R&B, for any kind of rock-based music, it all came out of our African American community. So good. And so the role of the piano.
Yeah, and the role of the piano is
When you're not soloing.
yeah, when I'm not soloing or playing melody, sometimes you'll play the melody of the song, as I was today. But a lot of the time you'll have another instrument for that, perhaps a trumpet or a saxophone or any other instrument. So the main thing you want to know as a piano player is the chords. And I can attest to this because when I first started playing, I really had, to be honest, I had very poor reading. So I couldn't read very many like notes or complicated double staff type of reading. But I figured out chords and how to read chord symbols. And it actually took me a really long way because when I came up to play with people, like there were other people who could play the melody. They had, saxophone players, trumpet players, trombones, everything like this. So as long as I could play my chords, it really helped out and, everybody really enjoyed it. So that would be my recommendation is anyone who likes piano and wants to get into it, especially in jazz, learn all their chords, all their 2-5-1s. So I would just do it. And if you know it all the keys, it'll take you a long way. Because that's really going to be your goal. And everyone loves to hear, especially nice, lush chords, good voicings. So, yeah, that's the most important thing.
Okay, so let's go ahead and move into your second piece.
Okay. All right, great. So now we're going to go into a song entitled Ladybird, which was originally composed by Tad Amaran. And we can talk a little bit about it afterwards, but we'll just go right into it for you guys.
little bit about improvisation.
Yeah.
So, relevant to all of us, let's first of all ask people out here, how do you define improvisation? What is improvisation? Go ahead.
Being able to sort of create on fly and still have it be cohesive.
Yeah, that's a pretty good definition, actually. Anybody else want to take a crack at it? The definition of improvisation. What about the relevance of improvisation? Like, what is the relevance to those of us who are not jazz musicians, or not musicians at all? What would be the relevance of being comfortable with improvising?
That it returns back to the root.
Yeah, well, actually, that's true. Eventually, everything was kind of cyclical. So, music is a process of building tension and releasing tension. And harmonically, we do that by starting with a home base and then building somewhere and coming back in all the worlds of music. Okay. Anybody else have a thought about improvisation and its relevance to us? Yeah.
Something that you're making up on the spot, but also something that sounds good at the moment and feels good.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So, in truth, everything that is a composition starts out as an improvisation. So Beethoven was an enormous improviser. And compositions come from improvisation. And so everything that's an invention, everything that is we eventually establish as being unique or special, has to be improvised first. I have to come up with the idea. So the key for improvisation is the willingness to be able to create without necessarily knowing that it's going to be right or okay. It's the way we learn to speak languages. We have vocabulary, we took French class, but how many of us that took French class still speak French? And the answer is only the ones that were willing to improvise and go out and use whatever few words they had and say, I'm gonna put them out there. And so what we have here is a group of people that have been trained in the art of improvisation. And the art of improvisation has enormous relevance to solving problems and like making life work. And so that's kind of a key component of what you're listening. It may be a type of music you may or may not be into, but behind what they're doing is this incredible improvisation skill set, which has lots of applications beyond the music. So that's why we're doing these arts and education thing, because there is something that comes out of what we're doing here. All right, so let's go ahead and move into the next piece.
Okay. All right, great. So the next piece is called Blue Baza, and it's a Bossa Nova. So for everybody that's ever heard of a Bossa Nova, or if they haven't, what that is it's a genre of music that was created in the 1950s in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And it's sort of a Latin style of jazz. It uses a lot of the same chords and harmonies similar to jazz, but it has a lot of things that are more indicative of samba music and traditional Brazilian music. So it's a really awesome cross-cultural sort of music, and that's one thing that makes it so great. So we'll play a little bit, and then we can talk a little bit more about it afterwards. So as I was saying, that's a Bossa Nova, which was really a genre that was created by Joe Gilberto and Antonio Carlos Jobim. So those are some of the major artists. And it was made popular in the 1950s as, especially, who's the saxophone player? Stan Getz, especially with the collaboration with Stan Getz, which kind of brought it over to America out of Brazil.
So just to elongate on that, we're going to be talking a little bit now about history and the connection to play music, and we're going to be talking a little bit about John Coltrane in a second, and I'll let you guys do that. But Charles Mingus is famous for having said, just because I'm playing jazz, I don't forget about me. I play or write me the way I feel through jazz. Music is or was a language of the emotions. If you want to understand jazz, you have to understand the stories behind it. Not all the stories are pleasant, because history is not pleasant. Will you still listen? So when we talk about the history of jazz, it came through a lot of pain and struggle, particularly in our African American community, and was born out of that, and so we have to understand that. Bossa Nova was a type of blues. What we did here was a kind of a samba version, which is what happens when the melting pot occurs, and we do it. So he's actually playing a samba rhythm on the bass drum, and pretty much that was out of it. So it's really an amped up, it's very fast. The original Bossa Nova was literally a blues. It was a lament of the truth of the moment, which is what B.B. King says blues is. And so a huge component of jazz music is to express truth. And a lot of the truth that was born out of our African American community was born out of this insidious history of racism. And what music was to go ahead and kind of push up against that or be able to help live through it. And so what we have as an obligation basically as jazz musicians is to learn that history and to understand it. And so I'll leave it there, and we're going to later on talk a little bit about John Coltrane, and I think we have a guest here that's going to be playing as well, so we'll go ahead and touch back on this theme. Yeah?
Can I add to the bossa? So like you said, Gilberto was and along with Joe Beam and was originally, the rhythms was born from the movement of the dances during Carnival, and also the martial art known as capoeira. And then that was originally born from the slaves that was part of the slave trade, the triangle.
Yeah.
Rio was the first port of call for many slave traders. And then it was the Caribbean, then later, the last two ports was New Orleans, South Carolina, and Norfolk, Virginia. So the rhythmic connections between swing and samba, or matao, as my friend used to say, he said there's the connection of the clave, the clave, the clave, 3/4 sound clave, which was born from the Gold Coast, from the tribes off the Gold Coast of Africa.
Yeah.
So if you listen to West African music, indigenous West African rhythm from the tribes, which the Yoruba, the Igbo, all those tribes, there's similarity pulses in each, even though there's tribal differences, like there's where they put the pulse, but there's like rhythms on top, but there's a signifying pulse. That's how those tribes used to communicate to each other. When they, if there was danger or if there was a dispute or,
Yeah.
and then that rhythm was born from Brazil, from Caribbean places like Cuba, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Haiti, and then from New Orleans, where, because I'm pretty sure you elaborated on that, New Orleans Congress Square in 1860, they was allowed to go and on Sundays practice their rituals.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So you hear that narrative, remember that first slide we put on is we're now writing history from the perspective of a global vision. And what you just did is basically kind of outline a lot of the global vision that was in the piece that we just heard, that they had eventually had to evolve to. That's a very long and complicated history of exchanges that we don't want to homogenize into just a single little capsule, because by doing that, we lose the complexity of the way humanity has evolved. And how we have always been exchanging in this manner for a long period, or it has come through a really difficult and tribulation-filled history, and that tribulation-filled history is part of what gave it the creativity. And so if we extrapolate that out, and we're only playing the music, we're not really playing the song, we're not really playing its history. So, okay, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to you. So
And it was just one more thing I wanted to maybe elaborate on if time allows. Just so everyone can be really clear on what we're talking about with some of the clave rhythms. Now, do you mind if you play maybe like Blue Baza just by yourself so they can just hear that the clave rhythm?
Yeah, so we were playing, as you said, like a more amped up version of Bossa Nova. Bossa Nova, like you said, is a blues. So most traditional Bossa Novas, you would have a nylon string guitars, usually singing, and very, very, what was that?
No, you're on the laid back beat.
Laid back drums, very sparse, and like sticking to the clave, which in this case I was playing a 3-2 clave, and I'll try that up for you. So.
There's a lot of offbeats on there. There's a lot of ands of the rhythm. It's 1 and 2 and 2 and and it's basically all offbeats except for what the first one and it's on 1 and there's also a 4 at the end.
Yeah.
But it's a lot mostly on offbeats, so that's one of the things that really is unique to that style of music. And Sam, can you demonstrate how you play a bass line to that?
Yeah, a lot of Bossa Novas are taught like that. But when you actually listen to the records, they play mostly at like half notes, where you just be more like and so the sound of the melody is probably my fault. I usually
There's no fault. It works well as it sounds.
But yeah, it's very relaxed kind of folk sounding music when you actually listen to the original Brazilian recording. It was, another kind of interesting thing is, from my understanding, is it was very popular in Brazil for a few years, kind of like disco in America, and then after a few years, basically when it started to become popular here, Brazil just turned on, and they just hated Bossa Nova. They just threw it away, kind of like how we did disco for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So I thought it was kind of funny.
They probably got oversaturated with it. So yeah, when all the piano also is playing a lot of these off rhythms. So just real quickly, we'll all just play just the rhythm to it. I'm not going to play the melody. I just want you guys to hear the way that all the rhythms interact. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, and to go back, remember we talked about the rhythm section is what makes the beat. We always talk about, I like the beat. Well, we don't like the beat, it's false. You know, what we really mean is, we like the formula of the rhythm in these three layers. And so they just demoed what puts the beat in the bossa, okay? And that is these three layers. He's punching on the accents, okay? And by the way, he has the option of also punching differently if he chooses, which he did. All right, he's laying down the bass structure, which is locking to the bass drum, and then he's doing this what we call a syncopated pattern that is basically the clavic pattern in Bossa. So that was really good. Yes, thank you. That's a nice demo. We're going to move on. I think we need to move on to make sure we get to all the pieces because they really want to hear you play. They don't want to hear you talk, or me talk at least. So let's go ahead and move on to Upjump Spring. And can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So Upjump Spring, well, probably it's not the best time of year to do this song. I thought about that after. Should have done Winter Wonderland or something.
Yeah.
But this song it's a 3/4 jazz. What do they call it? A waltz. It's a jazz waltz, which is another really common swing. The most common swing probably the 4/4, but this is a 3/4 swing. And so we'll just let you guys hear it, and then we can talk a little bit more about it afterwards. So give it a little intro. so it's just a 3/4 jazz where you're playing in the time signature of 3/4 instead of 4/4. And that song was originally made popular by Freddie Hubbard, and it's just a great song. Do you guys have anything else to say about that song? Sister did too. So we'll probably move it along now, and I want to, for this next song, I want to introduce a special guest, Kareem Gideon, that we have here today. So if everyone can give him a And the next song we're going to be playing is called My Favorite Things, which a lot of you have probably heard of before. And this was made popular in the jazz world by John Coltrane, who's one of the most important and powerful figures in jazz. And so, should we go into a little discussion first, or do you want to play the song and then go into
Your call. Your call.
Okay. What do you think? Do you want to go play the song and then discuss it a little further?
Yes, play it then.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to get right into this song. So,
I have sheet music, I want to make sure that.
do you want to do the melody or just the solo? You got the melody?
You got your melody.
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll do the intro and stuff. I'll do the intro. So, what I want to say now is that one of the most remarkable and profound things about all these artists that we've discussed here today is that the music that they created, which is such brilliant music, was created in the face of unimaginable racism and discrimination. So these artists had to persevere through a system that essentially worked against them every step of the turn. And a lot of the time they weren't compensated for their work, or they weren't properly recognized for their work. And it was basically a system designed to crush these artists, but they refused to be crushed. And what came out of it is jazz, which is now recognized by many as the greatest American contribution to art. So I think Wynton Marsalis said it best when he said, "The knowledge and intelligence and human depth of jazz demonstrates so clearly the absurdity of the treatment of Black people in our country." So I just thought that that was a great quote. And it's really important, as Professor Miller had mentioned, just to understand the history and appreciate this music. So I want to ask you guys, what do you think are some ways that are important to appreciate our jazz history?
Very good question.
Well, one thing that,
Sorry, we're getting somebody from online, so we'll go ahead and take their comment. What did you say, Darlene? To listen to the songs and appreciate the music and the context of the music.
Yeah, I think that's great.
and where that music came from too, meaning the musicians and their experiences. Because that's where the music's coming from. It's coming from the person's life experience. It's not just chords, it's not just melodies.
It's easy to sit here and play the song and la-di-da-di-do, you know, it's fun, but what you have to realize is that it was a lot of sacrifice made in the making of this music, and the people that made it had to go through a lot of, suffering to make this music. So we have to appreciate that and take time to understand that.
Dizzy Gillespie, one of my favorite Dizzy Gillespie quotes is, "People died for this music. You can't get no heavier than that." What he meant by that is that from early 1800s, when Buddy Bolden was walking the streets of New Orleans, to today, a lot of people died and sacrificed to tell their stories and some way tell the truth about what's going on. I think it's important if you listen to this music, you should learn the history of the music and learn the history of its people not just. I think there's a big problem, and you guys including those guys that have this ideal view of these men and women who perform this music, but don't understand they went to hell. I mean, you gotta realize Billie Holiday was essentially blackballed, followed by the FBI for years because she's on Strange Street. Same thing with Louis Armstrong. There's a second thing in a particular song he did remember Henry Ross, got him on the FBI list. And pretty much any musician past in the 60s who played a benefit concert, donated the team of Malcolm X was followed by that guy. And it's great. You know, it's one of the known secrets of this music that we supported, a lot of musicians supported King. They supported Malcolm X. And Hope benefit concerts for this institution because it was important. John Coltrane's Alabama was written because he saw what was happening out in Montgomery on TV with fire hoses and dogs and police officers. And that was his musical reaction to that. A lot of the music in the post-pop era is a reflection of re-embracing Black identity and Black culture. Wayne Shorter, some of Wayne Shorter's famous tunes, like the Fatiguing Footprints, was callbacks to the things that they were, of Africa, and that's sort of like a spirit of consciousness that was in the music, It's always, even Louis Armstrong, a lot of people believe that, oh, Louis Armstrong really wasn't. He was very attuned, very hip cat. He was one of the performers, I'd say. And I think, and we live in an era, I went to school a lot with people, so and it's like, it's a very, in the college system itself doesn't teach this. It's maybe because they don't know, or they don't want, or they really what it is, they don't want to cover it because they want you focus on playing rather than being, honestly, music. People make contrary honest because he was honest with himself, his culture. Same thing with Miles. That's why I think that's what's missing in what's needed is that idea of learning about, these are hard subjects to talk about. And you have to learn. If you learn these hard subjects, and discuss them openly, we wouldn't be in the position we're in now, but these things were discussed previously. When there was people who was really engaging in dialogue. And now it's just free form because we have engaged. But the music has always been a rallying point to have these discussions. And this music broke the color barrier.
Yeah.
This fairness, being good, first white musician to hire black musicians, and he got flack for it. Where he said he didn't care because he said their sound and their vibe was more important to him. And, these are human beings. Miles hired Bill Evans, and Getz was one of the most respected musicians. He respected his biggest influence was Lester Young. So there's always, musicians itself is always, we had that dialogue, communication, the rest of the world hasn't caught up to us yet. I think when they catch up to us, we'll be all right.
Yeah. Thank you. A key component is really most of the challenges that we have in the world that are based on injustice and inequity are a lack of willingness to lean in and feel the discomfort that comes with reestablishing equity and understanding our history. And so thank you very much for articulating that, because jazz demands it, blues demands it, and all of the music that you guys listen to was born out of this music. And so therefore it's kind of an obligation to music appreciation at any level. So thank you very much for that. We need to make sure we get to some question and answer here. So we've got a couple more pieces. So let's go ahead and roll on into those pieces. Again, we want to thank our guests.
Thanks, Graham.
Put you in the billboards and whatever. So we're going to do this again, and Kareem will honor you even better.
Oh, no problem, man.
Okay.
Okay, so one more thing on that last song. This is just pertaining a little bit more to the music. So, because I know a lot of people are into jazz and a lot of people are into other kinds of genres of music, and maybe that are more popular nowadays and that they're more accustomed to in their daily life. So, can you guys play that groove one more time? Just that main groove from Favorite Things?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Does anyone recognize that song?
I recognize it, but I want to give another.
Someone say, what song is it?
Take 5?
No, close.
Song of Storms.
Song of Storms. Yeah, he was right. Where was that from?
The Legend series, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was used before Ocarina of Time, but.
No, I think, yeah, from Ocarina of Time. Yeah.
So the people on our Zoom, they knew that too, Song of Storms. Thank you, Ian, for that.
Yeah, so basically what I was just showing you is that John Baptiste actually had mentioned this in an interview, you guys, I saw this, about the song, but this song is very similar to the chord structure of My Favorite Things. It's actually an almost identical song structure. So people can look at, something like jazz and say, oh, I don't understand jazz, I don't know that, but I like Zelda and, I like this, and they don't know that it's actually really pretty much the same thing. So jazz is not only important just to learn jazz, and it's great to learn jazz, but it can be a great jumping off point for musicians who want to learn any kind of music. Because overall, the harmonies and the fundamental music theory and what you learn can be applied across the board. So with that said, do one more quick. One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I just wanted to include it in this program to show people that I think that all music, it has merit. And a lot of times I feel that people treat music as, oh, it was from, some classical composer, Beethoven or something, and now we have to study it in music history and, oh, no, it's from a video game, it's from anime or something, so it doesn't have the merit of other music. And I just don't believe that. I think that all music has merit, and I don't care if it's from a video game, from an anime, from TikTok, I don't care where you got it from, because at the end of the day, it's all just notes, and it's also more similar than what people think. So I think that, these type of musics are a lot more similar than people think, and it's great if they play all of it. I think video game music is great as well, so.
Preach. So, we're coming to a point for question and answer, and then if we have room for that one last piece, we'll do it. I just want to mention, if you have any interest, if anybody here online or here has interest in developing their creativity more, we have a jazz combo class. Steve Summers, can you please stand up and say hello? Hello. Yeah, so Steve teaches our jazz combo class and does a really great job. The combo is not really a combo anymore, it's a big band, so just to let you know. We also have Michelle Lorena, who's teaching our songwriting class. Michelle, can you stand up as well? And songwriting is all about improvisation too, but telling your stories and telling your truth. So it's born out of that medium of blues too, like what's your truth? Okay, and if you're telling your truth, it's going to have merit to other people as well. And so that's one of the things that she teaches. And then we'll be having, John is going to be teaching piano coming up in the winter, and his piano is particularly for people who are interested in being creative with composition, with production, our audio people that have to learn to produce produce things and whatever. So John, we're really happy to welcome you to our faculty starting in the winter.
Oh, thank you.
So, and the class date and time is?
It's gonna be on Thursdays at 6 to 8:30, I believe, is that the time?
I have no idea.
I'm
It's
gonna
a
double check.
Tuesday.
Oh, Tuesday from 6
Six to 8:30, yeah, so, okay, good. It'll be out there, so you can look at it, it's one of those times. Okay, go ahead, and let's go ahead and, you wanted to do a dream?
Oh, yeah, do you wanna take any questions before?
Yeah, let's do that, let's do some Q&A, does anybody have any, yeah, go ahead.
There was one phrase that piqued my interest in your comments, John, regarding a little bit of copying going on, and wondered, with the example of George Harrison and She's So Fine. And he did the same thing, had a lawsuit, lost, had to pay some money. Any of that going on with jazz?
Yeah, some misappropriation, or what sometimes people call appropriation, but I prefer to say misappropriation to make it really clear. Any comments on that?
I'm not sure,
I know of a famous case. Keith Jarrett versus Steely Dan.
Oh,
The song, Gaucho, I think it was Gaucho. And it's Keith Jarrett's, You Know What You're Living. I think, Walter Brecker said he listened to that when he was, he wrote the lyrics for Gaucho.
Right.
And Keith Jarrett's Keith Jarrett, listen to this, it's my position.
Yeah.
Call some lawyers. So now when you go buy that album and listen to that song, you look at the writing credits, it says Don Fagan, Walter Brecker, Keith Jarrett. Because Keith Jarrett, it wasn't just, there's a little leeway with chords, like you can do contrafactual tunes. There's, rhythm changes. If that's the case, Gershwin, the state of Gershwin, we see in a lot of cats. But when you, it was just like the melody itself, even if it's from a tune like You Know What You're Living, and then what they did, they put lyrics to it and called it their own composition. That's merit.
Yes. And
that's probably the only case I can think of.
Well, so that was a turning point. So the same thing kind of happened in the 80s where it became not okay for white musicians to copy black musicians, but it was only in the 70s and 80s. Up to that point, for 150 years, it was commonplace for white record companies and white musicians to take music from black artists and not pay respect back to them. It gets back to that theme that you have to understand what you're doing and where it came from. If you want to contribute to justice and equity, it's an essential element. And it was commonplace. It's what we call white privilege. It's the privilege of white people to be able to take and do whatever they want. Because they own the institutions, they own the politics and this and that. And in your generation and today's world, that's not okay. And it's not only not okay, but it's also important to know the history of this so that you understand. And it doesn't mean that the music, like the music of Elvis Presley, is wonderful fusion of African American and European American, but for him to take credit for music that he got from other people is an ethic or a way of living that we don't want to duplicate and we want to understand. And it was historically, ingrained. So that was a good question. There's a lot of effort on the part of those of us who come later on in history to know this history.
Yeah, and I think that it's really about the intention and giving credit to the former artists, because musicians have always built upon other musicians. Just like in My Favorite Things, John Coltrane was using a song from Sound of Music. So he didn't write the music, but he didn't claim to write the music. He took the music and did his own thing with it. And that happens in hip hop every day. I mean, that's actually kind of the basis of hip hop, right? It was originally on records, and they were breakbeats, and they would sample a breakbeat of a different artist. But it's not like they were making James Brown. If they sampled James Brown, they're not taking James Brown's song. They would really do something completely new with it and, rap over it and take that part. So I think that the most important thing is giving credit to the artist, make sure that you recognize the original artist who did it and, the intent behind it. But, I think that it can be done gracefully using others' music and making a new composition because, after all, it's only 12 notes on the keyboard, you know, on the piano. So no matter what, you're gonna get some of that happening. Which actually, is any more questions, or that could be?
Yeah, let's see if anybody else has questions about the artists in terms of how they play, what they play, why they play.
I have one question. Can you explain what the term outside playing means?
Oh, playing outside? Yeah, so in jazz, you have a lot more ability to manipulate harmony, manipulate melodies and key changes than what you would in other types of music. So when you're playing inside, generally speaking, you would be in the key. So if I'm playing in, again, the same song we're doing, I'm in the key of E minor. So the notes are going to be. That's the basic pentatonic scale. So if I want to go outside, I'd be using some notes that were not necessarily in that scale. I might be. Outside of the key, so to speak, which is going to have some effect. It's going to probably create some tension, and you're going to have to know kind of how to manipulate it and have your own choice of, you know, how far you want to go outside, and that's sort of a very subjective thing. But I don't know, Steve. Do you think that's a pretty good explanation?
Well, yeah, it's also important to always know how the notes do relate to the basic chord.
Yeah.
Not within the scale. Chromatic.
Yeah, because from that point, you have to find your way back. You know, part of being able to play outside and make it relevant is to be able to come back inside. And so that's one of the things that musicians are always trying to kind of like find out, how far out can I go? Same with drummers when they start filling, they start doing stuff. But they always got to make sure that that time stays steady inside of them so they can find their way back. So.
Right. Or generally, yeah, when you're playing out, the general concept is at some point you're going to find your way back in. Because if you go out and you just stay out, then you can do it. But
there's artists that do that.
There's artists that do it. So the last thing I'll say about that is that, to me, as a teacher, one thing that I always tell everybody is, do you know your keys? Because do you guys know how many keys are there? Well, that's kind of a, you know, minor. So in generally speaking, it's about 12 keys. Okay, so C major, D major, E major. And I find a lot of people, the only reason I bring this up is because I teach a lot of people who get really far along in music and their teachers don't teach them the keys. They just teach them how to read music in general. You know, they can read the keys, but they don't know all the keys. And so one thing in jazz, and if you're really trying to master, I would say any music, but especially in jazz, you really want to know your keys, because it's only 12 of them. It seems like a lot, but after you spend some time, the way I teach it is like this. When you go to work, you work with 12 people. The first day you come in and you don't know anybody, right? You're like, who's this? I don't know any of these people. After a couple of weeks go by, it's okay, you know, that's Jane and this is Fred. And now I know 3 of them, 4 of them. And then after a year or two, you probably know all of their names, and you didn't even try, right? It's just the time you spent, and you got used to it. So that's the way I kind of think of keys. It's something that takes some time, but once you get it down, it's just sort of, you know, intuitive.
So before we move on to finish up, which I think we're almost at the end, I want to ask if anybody online has any questions. Maybe if you put them in the chat room, or if you want to go ahead and just click on mute. So if you guys have any questions, now's the time to go ahead and ask them. We're getting crickets here, so.
Hi, this is Darlene. I didn't get the gentleman's name that played the cornet.
Gentleman's name is the trumpet? Yeah.
Kareem Gideon.
Kareem. Okay. All right. Anything else?
Play it anywhere? It's a good time for
I actually I'm playing on the 20th at Regis Jazz Cafe.
Yeah, tell us about the group that you play with.
I play with a band called this is a tongue twister, but in the tradition jazz style, we're a band that fuses bebop and African rhythms.
Great.
So it's led by a saxophonist named Uzi Tafatahona, who plays everything. It's like I have to tell him, he plays two woodwinds.
Yeah.
But he's a brilliant writer and composer. He put this group together 24 years ago.
Great.
Steve Thomas should be familiar with Boza.
Yeah.
And, we have a meeting on the 20th.
So he's talking about an ensemble or concert they're going to play on the 20th. Where was the location again?
Aretha's Jazz Cafe.
Aretha's Jazz Cafe, which is located
In the music hall.
Music Hall. Okay, good. All right, good. I don't see any other questions here, so let's go ahead and if you want to play the final piece or.
Okay, well, I want to thank everybody for coming to join us today. And like we talked about, I have a class coming up next semester, so look me up online. And my name is John Dolph, and I'd love to help everybody, particularly with piano and learning. And like I said, I'm open to all kinds of genres of music. I'm primarily based in jazz, but I think that could be a jumping out platform to learn all kinds of genres of music. So with that, we'll just play one more song for you guys.
thank you guys for taking the time to go ahead and present this to us, also to talk to us frankly about what's behind the curtain, because very often we hear the music, but we don't understand like what it means or what you're doing to do it. So the paying the dues, we felt all the time and energy you put into playing music and the way you guys played for us. So again, let's give them a round of applause. And I especially want to thank you guys for showing up now in the class. You guys are like a captive audience, but you didn't have to enjoy it. You didn't have to participate, and you did. Your body language was great, like A's for all of you. So, you know, and then for everybody else as well, because the only way we can create a culture of artistry and culturally diverse artistry is to be able to go ahead and support it. And so I hope that you guys will join us for continuing events next Friday evening at 7 p.m., October 14th. We have a world-renowned Chinese peepop player who came from China originally, but she now hangs out with Indian raga musicians and jazz musicians and blues musicians and Canadian tumpun, which is the talking drum we were talking about, you know. And so she is a fusion artist, which is distinctly not what we would normally think about when we think of Chinese musicians, but this is what's happening. Our world is changing. People are recognizing that all of the world's music collaborates and coordinates and can be learned. And so if you'll join us, that'll be entirely virtual. She's coming to us from God knows where she is. She's on tour. But it will be in 160, so we'll have those of us that are meeting there can meet there at 160, and then it'll also be typed in virtually. She'll be talking to us and sharing music. And then after that, we have a variety of other things as well. So again, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate it. That was really, you know, hearing about what's behind the scenes is really remarkable. And the fact you had so much knowledge about it. We really
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so we'll take a 15-minute break and then we'll meet over in our classroom. We won't go forever, we'll go just a little bit to kind of talk about where we're going. Thank you guys. Nice
You made it so much better. Thanks for watching. Taking off here. I'm on my live too.
I was like, my favorite thing is it's tricky because you don't, it's like